Good morning, everybody. Today we are having a look at Psalm 72. Psalm 72, we are told at the very beginning, is a psalm written by Solomon. And if you look through the psalm itself, it's pretty clear that this is a prayer that Solomon is praying to God about himself, about him and his reign. It begins by saying, "Endow the king with your justice, O God, the royal son with your righteousness. May he judge your people in righteousness, your afflicted ones with justice." This reflects the same story that we see in the book of 1 Kings, where Solomon becomes king and he asks God, he talks to God and he asks for wisdom, that he would be able to rule justly and rightly and make wise decisions. And we know from that story that God grants his request. We're told that Solomon is one of the wisest kings that ever lived. And for a brief period of time, God answered all these things that he asked for. It goes on to ask, where Solomon asked that he would be someone that makes the land prosper, that he would defend the cause of the oppressed, and that he would bring peace to the land and prosperity to the nation. And we see in Solomon's reign that lasted for a bit. But his heart eventually turned away from God, and he turned toward other gods, trusted in other things to be the things that filled him and gave him meaning, where he found his wisdom. And eventually, the end of his reign, the kingdom of Israel split into two. So all of these things that we see here are really great to ask God for, but ultimately we don't see any of these things really fulfilled in Solomon's life at all. And so here's the thing, that what do we do with this story then? Because it seems pretty good, right? Solomon, a king who's seeking God's favor, asking that God would help him to be this wise person, this righteous person, that he would be the one that brings peace and prosperity to the people. That sounds really good, but what do we do when this ultimately didn't come true? That it happened for a period of time, but ultimately failed. Here's what I think we do. It's pretty clear in the Bible that every story is really about Jesus. Every story that we read give us glimpses of who Jesus really is. We see people like Adam and Eve, who are walking in the garden with God, who have everything there in paradise, and yet they reach for that fruit because they want to be like God themselves. We see people like Abraham, who God reveals himself to. God makes these amazing promises, and yet Abraham tries to make those same promises happen in his own strength. We see people like David, who is a man after God's own heart, who through most of his rule and reign, again, reflected this attitude, this love and passion for God. Yet this same man committed someone to murder and committed adultery and tried to cover it all up. And Solomon as well. We see this same pattern in the disciples who are with Jesus in Jesus' presence, and they see and do and experience some amazing things, but ultimately they don't get it. They deny him, they run away, they betray him. And the thing is that what this psalm, I think, really says is that these stories are just like our stories. There are certainly times where we are a reflection of God ruling and reigning, right? There are moments in our life where it seems clear that God is real and he is at work. But the final truth of the matter is that you and I, like Solomon, are ultimately broken. Even if we try our best to be the godliest, wisest, smartest, most righteous people, we will fail. So what do we do? Well, as we read through Psalm like Psalm 72, or we read stories about David or Abraham or the disciples or whoever, those things are ultimately small pictures of the ultimate picture of the ultimate human, Jesus. Right? If you have a look at this psalm, it says this about this king. May he defend the afflicted among the people and save the children of the needy. May he crush the oppressor. May he endure as long as the sun, as long as the moon, through all generations. Right? You look at this and you see, well, that can't ever really be true of any human. Right? In our brokenness, we'll never be able to obtain that. Verse 12, for he will deliver the needy who cry out, the afflicted who have no one to help. He will take pity on the weak and the needy and save the needy from death. He will rescue them from oppression and violence, for precious is their blood in his sight. Long may he live. In our lives, there are certainly glimpses where we are able to enact God's justice and God's love and his compassion and his righteousness and his goodness. Even in people that don't know Jesus, we see those pictures of people, right? But ultimately, even in the best people, they don't come close. They never measure up. They'll always falter and fade. And so, this psalm is ultimately a cry about something more than broken humanity can provide. It's a cry to an ultimate king, someone without blemish or brokenness, someone without sin, someone without fault, someone who can take God's laws and his justice and his goodness and live it out to the full. This is a picture, and every story really are pictures of the need for Jesus. So, I hope that your story and my story, just like Solomon's story, are a reflection of that. That, yeah, we want God to bless us. We want to see God work through us. And those are good things to ask for. But ultimately, our lives are crying out for something more. That when people look at us, they will long for Jesus too. Amen.